he's willing to step up to 175 to fight these guys like Bivol and Kovalev, etc. But you can't be stepping up to 200 or 190 or something like just becomes like actually shouldn't be allowed. Right. So, I think Charlo is the front runner.
Welcome back to Fighting Words. I'm your host, Carissa Maxwell, joined as always by senior combat writer Andreas Hale and senior combat editor Tom Gray. We are 3 months out from Canelo Alvarez's next fight. He always fights the Saturday of the weekend of Mexican Independence Day, which of course this year falls on September 16th. But we don't know who he's fighting. An opponent has not been announced yet. We do know it will not be a rematch with Dimitri Bivol, but we now also know that it will not be against WBC cruiserweight champ Badou Jack. Now, he tweeted on Saturday, "I won't be fighting Canelo next. They said the weight difference is too much. They wanted to drain the old man and fight me 20 pounds under the cruiserweight limit for the title, plus a rehydration clause. Canelo, let's give the fans what they want to see and fight David Benavidez." Now, we will get back to David Benavidez because I know we have a lot of thoughts on that. But of course, the cruiserweight max is 200 pounds. So fighting at 180, 20 pounds below the max, that's a big ask. So we already saw a lot of the debate around the rehydration clause with Ryan Garcia ahead of the Tank Davis fight. So is this a fair or completely absurd ask from Canelo's team?
It's an absurd ask from Canelo's team. I think because the money that Jack would make, it would be his biggest payday, ever in his entire career. I don't know how long he's been professional for, but it's been a very long time. If he's openly declining that, not even considering it, then that tells you how unrealistic it is. Eddie Hearn, promoter Eddie Hearn, mentioned that Badou Jack was once a 168-pound fighter. Yes, 6 or 7 years ago. He's moved up to light heavyweight, and then he's not fought at light heavyweight for a couple of years. He's a 39-year-old man. His body's filled out. The 20 pounds cut is enough to criticise. The fact that they also want to inject a rehydration clause in is absolute lunacy, because what you're essentially saying here is that Badou Jack is just way too big for Canelo Alvarez. If that's the case, pal, don't fight him. Don't offer to fight him. It's like saying to Usyk, I'll fight Usyk if you drop down to 200 pounds again or 190. If the matchup can't be made, it can't be made. But don't ask the guy who's almost 40 to cut that weight and then watch what you're eating and drinking until the next morning. It's stupid.
You know what this is? It reeks of desperation. It feels like Team Canelo can't find an opponent or a meaningful fight because Dimitri Bivol is not interested in a rematch at 175. So they're trying to find a fight that would mean something. And him collecting a cruiserweight title sounds good on paper. But Badou Jack has integrity. He's not going to get priced. He's not going to get paid off to take a fight where it's less than ideal circumstances so he can lose his title just to ride off in the sunset with a lot of money. Sounds good in theory, but Badou Jack truly feels like he still has more left in his career than to hand a title over to Canelo. It seems super desperate. Like he couldn't land the Bivol fight, so let's see what we can do that has a title attached to it. Because as we know, Canelo chases titles. He doesn't like to fight people without them. If there's not one involved, he doesn't want to be there. So it's a ridiculous ass. It's disrespectful. Yeah, once upon a time, I was 90 pounds in the second grade. That don't mean I can just get down to that weight once again. I wasn't 90 pounds in the second grade. I was much lighter than that. I think it was at 90 pounds like in the ninth grade or something like that. I was a tiny man. But the point being is I can't get down to that weight now. For you to ask me to do it is like me trying to kill myself. It's disrespectful. I'm glad Badou Jack aired them out and we can move on because let's be honest, nobody even wanted to see that fight to begin with.
Not only that, right, but essentially Canelo would have a cruiserweight belt, but he's not even came close to beating a cruiserweight. It doesn't even make sense. You're pulling the guy down 20 pounds below the limit. I've never heard anything like it. No.
But we both all know that Canelo, of course, wants to be a cruiserweight champ and his mission to be a champion in every single division. But for the super middleweight division, we know that that is his sweet spot. He is the first and reigning undisputed champion of that division. But back in the middleweight division, where he's a former champion, there is a guy who is a pretty good contender to be his opponent in September, and that's a guy who goes by the name of Jermell Charlo, who is the reigning WBC middleweight champion. So the boxing rumor mill, and including Eddie Hearn, has all but confirmed that Charlo will be Canelo's opponent in September. There are a lot of politics at play here, so we know it's not as simple as that. And of course, fans on Twitter are criticizing that if Canelo is going to fight Charlo at 168 pounds, who, by the way, who has not fought in 2 years, why not just fight Bivol or Benavidez? We know that that's not the actual issue here, though. And again, there's politics, there's promoters, there's broadcasters. So how realistic is this fight, and what should the controversy around this matchup actually be?
I mean, it's kind of everything you outlined, Carissa. For one, it's like, look, people want to see the Charlo fight like 2 years ago. The time is up. Charlo hasn't had a fight in 2 years. He has to move up in weight. And since then, there's a viable contender by the name of David Benavidez, who is the WBC interim super middleweight champion. It's a fight that not only the fans want to see, but the boxing world wants to see as a whole, because two Mexicans fighting on Mexican Independence Day in America, it's a phenomenal fight. The storyline speaks for itself. Why wouldn't you want that fight? But what are we doing here with the Charlo fight? Charlo doesn't have a belt. Is Canelo defending his belts against a guy who would have to vacate and move up? I don't understand the logic in any of this. But isn't Charlo with Showtime in PBC, where David Benavidez is also there? So if you're Showtime PBC, if I'm David Benavidez, I'm pissed. Because why does this dude get to jump over me to get that opportunity? None of this makes sense. It is desperation time for Team Canelo. They're trying to find a fight. I am interested in a Charlo fight if Charlo had a fight at 168, because it's been so long. I don't necessarily care, but I guess they just got to find somebody to fight. I don't know, Tom. What do you think?
Yeah, Charlo, it's a great fight, but like Andreas has said, the inactivity, which is 2 years, I mean, that's a huge amount of inactivity if you're just going back in against a dangerous contender. Never mind a guy who has got more experience at the elite level, who is fighting in a higher weight class. It would essentially be the defining fight of Charlo's career, but he's coming into it completely unprepared. Physically, he's also had mental health problems. I don't know where he's at with that at the minute. You need to take that extremely seriously. It's just the timing on it is awful for Jermell Charlo. Maybe on the flip side, it's great for Canelo. It's still a fight that would do big business. It would still do pay-per-view, but there is reasons to be disappointed in that fight being discussed now and possibly going ahead in September. I would still want to see it. It's just it's a timing issue. Boxing's about timing in the ring, but also outside of it.
So now let's finally talk about David Benavidez. I tried very hard to not talk about him throughout this, but the last segment of this show is going to be a PR campaign for a matchup between Canelo and Benavidez. We have been advocating for this fight since even before he defeated Caleb Plant. I mean, he spoke to you, Andreas, and said he's coming for those Mexican holidays. He wants to be that Mexican icon boxer. So this is a fight we all wanted to see. And surprisingly, when we talked about this with other media members and people within the boxing industry out in Vegas for the Tank Garcia fight, we got a lot of like, that fight's not going to happen. No, why would you think you'd fight David Benavidez? But it makes sense. And you have made that point, the both of you, throughout this entire discussion. The two parts to this question are, should Benavidez be Canelo's next opponent, which we know the answer is yes, and will we ever see this fight happen, or is this matchup going to be taking the place of Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr., and how much of that consumed our conversations for the past however many years? Is that going to fill the void, or will we actually see that fight happen sooner than later?
The fight should happen now, but it's snake bitten. And I'm already starting to get quite bored of it, because it's the obvious fight to make. Politically, it's not easy. You've got Showtime PBC versus DAZN. I totally understand it. You've got the fact that Benavidez has been calling Canelo out in public, basically saying things that have probably got under Canelo's skin. So Canelo now is saying, you know, just stand there and know your place, little man. I'll fight you when I'm good and ready, if ever. And it's just became a circus and a kind of drama, the same way that Crawford and Bud Spence, Crawford and Spence did. It's becoming this kind of soap opera, and it's just going to keep carrying on and on and on till everyone's bored of it, and then they'll maybe do it in a year or two. But right now it looks miles away, absolutely miles away. I feel for Benavidez because he's the obvious contender. He's the only guy at 168 pounds that boxing fans and experts want to see fight Canelo. That's it, case closed. The Morrell fight, if it does happen, is a good fight for Benavidez, but it's not the fight people want to see.
Here's what I don't understand, Tom. Why would you do David Benavidez versus David Morrell now? Well, Morrell's still relatively young in his career. I believe he's 11-0. And why are we doing this fight now when, like you said, Benavidez has been calling out Canelo? And Chris, to your point, he wants the Mexican holidays. And it's the biggest fight that can be made in terms of money for Canelo right now. I don't understand the hurdles here. The bigger issue to me is the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get for you, Canelo, because you're not getting better with age. Benavidez is. So I don't understand the logic here of trying to stall him out or make him wait his turn. He is the undefeated two-time WBC champion, and he's an interim champion right now. He's next in line. He deserves it. He earned it. If I'm Benavidez, I mean, I know you got to make money and you got to fight, but I'm looking at the Morrell fight as like, I don't want that. Get me the Canelo fight. Figure this out, because if Charlo can get it, I damn sure can get it because we're on the same network. It's all a big mess, and it all starts with Canelo's desire to fight Dimitri Bivol. It has messed up everything in boxing because he wants that win back. Bro, you lost. Move on. He ain't going to fight you at 175 again. He already beat you. If you ain't going to fight him at 68, he's out, because unlike everybody else, Bivol's not a prize fighter who just fights for the money. He wants your world titles, and you don't want to give him that opportunity. That's your bad. But because of these decisions that Canelo's making, it's mucking up boxing. Figure it out, untangle it, give us the fight we want. If you're not going to give it to us in September, Cinco de Mayo needs to be Canelo versus Benavidez, and that's that. As boxing fans, we should not accept anything less.
Yeah, and also the one thing that we've not discussed is the fact that being interim champion, how long before the WBC actually tell Canelo you need to fight him? Are the WBC going to upset Canelo and tell him what to do to go again? I mean, it's a fight that Canelo's in no rush to have, but sooner or later, politically, Benavidez is entitled to that shot.
After an exciting year of marquee matchups, it is kind of ironic that the face of boxing, Canelo Alvarez, will have potentially two of the most uninteresting fights on the calendar. So in the meantime, we will just have to look forward to Spence Crawford happening next month. And this is also your reminder that the Sporting News 25 Under 25 will be released next week. So stay tuned for that. Again, turn your notifications on, sign up for our SN Fight Club newsletter. Until then, I am Carissa Maxwell. For Andreas, Hale, and Tom Gray, we will see you next week right here on Fighting Words.